People with limited English proficiency can get access to mortgage documents in their native language with advancements in technology. Documents is a digital language technology provider that empowers borrowers with interactive loan information. Company leaders recently announced an integration with nCino, a provider of cloud banking for the financial services industry. Mortgage lenders using nCino can now offer customers resources and educational materials in Spanish, Vietnamese, Korean, and Mandarin. My name is Kimberley Haas, and I will be the host of this Advancements in Technology podcast. For this episode, we spoke with George Baker, CEO and founder of Documents, and Ben Miller, EVP of US Mortgage at nCino, to learn more about the integration. First of all, I'd like to hear a little bit more about Documents itself. Tell us about the company and what the concept is for people that aren't familiar with your brand.
It'd be my pleasure. So by training, I'm a mortgage banker, so 30 plus years in the industry. But I have been fortunate enough to live 7 years overseas, and that gave me a unique perspective with respect to languages and how difficult it is to engage when your primary language is not the language which is commonly spoken in the country that you live in. So it came to me that about 8 years ago that the mortgage industry really lacked in the language area. And then if you take a look at our changing demographics, it just became more apparent that we needed to do something with respect to engaging consumers in their language of choice to try, in essence, to get more business, to be a better communicator with respect to the mortgage process, fees, disclosures, terms, and things of that nature. So I thought that after 30 years of being in the business, it was time to do something different. So I became a mortgage technologist, and I used my experiences to try to put together a software platform that marries very, very nicely with platforms like nCino that truly provide a consumer experience in different languages that helps to explain the process to folks who are engaged in obtaining a mortgage. So that's how it came about, and we've been pushing this for quite some time to try to get acceptance with respect to languages. There's a bunch of concern, apprehension with respect to regulations and risk and things of that nature, as there always is with languages. So that's the other perspective that we take. We feel that we have figured out the language Rubik's Cube solution that regulators want, that consumers need, that lenders certainly can use to try to gain more business. So we're very, very happy to be partnering with nCino as we provide this solution throughout the industry.
And so, Ben, maybe you can tell me from your perspective how the collaboration began. Like, how did you and George meet and decide that this might be a great solution for your consumers?
That's an easy one, Kimberly. I begged them to integrate with me. I'm sorry, Ben. I just had to throw that out there.
In full disclosure, folks.
We've been very fortunate throughout the pandemic to continue to grow as others contract, which has projected us to, the largest, front-end system or point-of-sale system in the industry. And as such, we attract the best of breed of these solution providers. And Documents is by far and away the best at what they do in trying to bring, native language education and explanation of the mortgage process to borrowers in various languages. Not you sometimes you think, well, maybe there's just a lot of Spanish speakers, so let's cover Spanish, or what's number 2 and 3 or 4. I mean, it's several languages that they're bringing to the table. And no one else is doing that really well. And so, we get a lot of interest from a lot of different parties. We've talked with Documents for, a little while before we were able to complete an integration and prioritize, that integration. But it was also driven not only by what they're doing that's interesting, but also, especially this is what drives it, is that market demand and a mutual customer base. And so, we found that we started having more and more mutual customers that are using both products independently. It's that we're really driving the conversation to say, hey, this would be a more natural workflow. It would be easier for our end users if this could have a more integrated, embedded experience. And that would help us, in turn, provide a better experience to this borrower. And like George said, drive, those experiences drive referrals. They help drive repeat customers or referral business. That is so important, especially in a market that's at multi-decade lows, right, from a volume standpoint. And so that I think is another catalyst that helped everyone really hone in on how do we retool what we're doing to try to differentiate ourselves from other lenders and provide better experiences for that end user to capture market share in a shrinking pie, so to say.
Your lenders are also benefiting from this, I'm sure, as well. Tell us a little bit about, George, maybe you can tell us about what Documents has to offer these clients, and then Ben, maybe you could tell us how that will differentiate for your users.
It'd be my pleasure. If I may, probably the best thing to do is just go over some of the stats associated with what we call the limited English proficiency or LEP market. There's approximately 68 million people in the country. That's about 1 in every 5 that speak a language other than English at home. Out of that 68 million, about 62% are native Spanish speakers. Of course, we know Spanish is the large LEP language. The interesting part is even if someone in that category is proficient in English, the surveys show us that about 80% of these individuals prefer to do business in their native language. Out of that population, about 26 million truly are limited with respect to their English abilities to understand. So that stands about at 8.2% of the population, but it's projected to grow to about 19% of the population. So one of the things I'm very fond of saying this, and I say this over and over again, is that we are really behind with respect to addressing demographics and consumer needs. For example, you can go and you can buy a toaster oven and you'll get instructions in 9 languages on how to use that. You can go to an ATM machine and you've got your choice of several languages for the services that you seek. You go to places like Amazon and there's dozens and dozens of languages. Now, the reason that these other industries provide these languages is because it makes good business. That's the only reason that they're doing it. What's unique about the mortgage industry is that we don't. We are pretty much English only, with the exception of having a multilingual loan originator. But everything else that people sign is basically in English, and there are very limited resources associated with helping a person understand the mortgage process. All the data, Kimberly, is in with respect to the 2008 downturn, when we have recessions and there's downturns. People that don't understand very well are the ones that are affected most by these particular situations, and it's because they don't understand what's going on. So the idea, by marrying with such a marquee name like nCino and providing our services along with them, it allows us to address the consumer by providing information to them on the nCino platform in a manner that they prefer and understand. One of the things that I like to bring out with respect to what we do is we're seeking to provide the Amazon model. And what that means is, I don't know if you know this, but if you call Amazon, they consider that to be a failure. What they want to do is present all the information to a consumer necessary for them to make a decision on the product or service that they seek. So if you call them, they feel that they have not done a good job. That concept overall in the mortgage industry is a little bit alien. We don't have that consumer-facing type platform. So by using Documents that's available in several languages, including English, we have the opportunity to marry our technology to help create this Amazon platform where we address the purchasing generations of today, which are younger, the first to be brought up using YouTube, Google, and smartphones. And this is how they get information. They don't call people. They are on their keyboards, and they're looking for different pieces of information, answers to different questions. And this is the particular niche that we fill. This is the particular value that we offer and are very happy to be offering through the nCino platform. The opportunity to build this particular Amazon-like model to answer multiple types of questions from consumers in various languages so that they feel comfortable with the process. What we're trying to do ultimately at the end of the day is to provide transactional clarity, right? In the mortgage industry, a survey came out 2 years ago. 80% of the folks out there have no idea what they're signing and closing. That's a tremendous number. 80%. If we're ever going to get to the land of doing e-closings, there's no way we're going to get there with that kind of a figure where folks don't understand. Some of the subset of the data was really interesting. 25% didn't even know what a closing was. That's a little unusual. I think what happens is we say the word closing, we say the word settlement, but we don't really explain it because people really don't ask. But that's a huge number on a national basis. 44% had higher costs than anticipated. But the big deal for us is that closing was the most stressful part of the entire process, only topped by actually moving into the home. So these are the areas in concert with nCino, because nCino is at the heart of this consumer experience, that we're trying to address by providing this transactional clarity, by bringing some light to a murky process. I mean, we're really building comfort and trust in the mortgage business, which I don't think has been there. As an old mortgage guy, I can tell you, we just don't do it very well.
George, you mentioned a couple of things, and I just want to circle back around to them before we get to Ben. One of the things that you mentioned was kind of the illiteracy when it comes to sitting down for a closing. And you also mentioned an emotional factor, stress, right? Do you think because the home buying process is such an emotional thing combined with a lot of stress that it's even more important for people to be able to read and view things in their native language, especially since so many more of these things are being done with technology as opposed to like sitting down with paper? And even with the paper days, you were completely rushed through documents, but now, especially since everything's electronic, in some cases, that it's going to become even more important for people to be able to view these things in their native language?
Yes. From my perspective, in my opinion, in today's day, it is imperative for mortgage lenders to be relevant, to provide information to people, because we really are in that quote-unquote information age. So let's go back, 10, 20 years. Back then, for lack of a better term, we had consumers, and many lenders like this, where consumers really didn't understand exactly what was going on. One of the contributing factors, for example, and I mentioned one to the 2008 meltdown, was that folks really didn't have an understanding as to what they were signing. That paradigm has changed, and the lenders that recognize that the ones that provide the most information, tangible, understandable information, in a manner that's preferred and understood by the loan applicant, that's the lender of today and tomorrow. It's not the old-time lender where we go back, where we just have confusion. We need to address and we need to provide information so that people actually get what's going on in their language of choice. And if we're doing that, we are taking a giant step forward in terms of advancing the mortgage industry from a consumer perspective.
Okay. So on your end, Ben, how will this change what consumers see? Did you have like any other type of system before where you were able to have documents in other languages? Is this completely new? Tell me more about that.
Yeah, this is actually a nice complement to something we introduced, a couple years ago or so, which was the intake process in Spanish. And we just call it our Spanish intake form. And so it's like your mortgage application experience, but not technically a mortgage application because that is regulated to be in English. But we can gather almost all of the information in a Spanish experience. And that's done when someone first interacts with our platform. They can recognize and see a toggle that offers that opportunity in Spanish. They hit that and everything is now presented in Spanish. And they interact in Spanish through gathering all of this intake form, and then they're given a follow-up message explaining how, we've been able to get to this point in Spanish, but we'll need to proceed now in English after this. that's what we had before. This allows us to do everything in Spanish up to that point and then show a nice task in their portal, a clear indication of how to proceed with documents in that same language or other languages, multiple other languages. Documents has more capability from languages than we have from an intake standpoint. We only have done Spanish thus far, but they can either go through our Spanish experience and continue on in Spanish through documents, or they can come in through English and then see that task in their portal via documents to continue in a native language and in whatever the native language might be that document serves. And so that's that how we serve up the experience and how we've integrated the process. And it's hard to do, but it's a tremendous differentiating factor because others aren't doing that. Others aren't embedding a natural workflow like that, a frictionless workflow. It's kind of another point I wanted to bring up is, at nCino, formerly known as Simple Nexus, we're a mobile first company in that our delivery mechanism, our delivery media initially was mobile only, and we ended up adding a web component years later, but kept that foundational, theory and practice of always being mobile focused, mobile first. So whatever we developed, it was something that was a good experience on mobile. Other companies are developing for web and then try to cram it into mobile, and you don't get the best experience on your phone, right? It's dramatically different real estate. And then I bring that up because we find that particularly with Spanish speakers, the vast majority of those borrowers do not own a personal computer or a laptop or things of that nature. They are doing all of their transactions via their mobile phone. Their banking, the mortgage experience, their texting, how they consume media is via a mobile phone rather than a desktop experience. And I think that's another kind of beautiful data point in this partnership that George and his team are servicing this underserved community of non-native speakers that more than likely are going to be consuming this technology, via mobile. And we are the leading, mobile platform, not only the leading point of sale, but also the strongest expertise in mobile technologies.
Now, do you have the option to not only have print, but also like things read aloud? Is that something that's available as well?
We use a plethora of digital tools to convey information to loan applicants. So those digital tools include interactive video, they include graphics, all forms, all types of graphics. We have hyperlinks, for example, that explain all the various fees in different languages associated with a person's loan. We've got text-to-speech capabilities. As Ben was mentioning, one of the issues that we had that we addressed on our mobile side was that you could have somebody looking at their phone and possibly two people looking over their shoulder. We have very limited screen space and it's difficult to read. So we put text-to-speech throughout the entire platform. So if you want to listen, you simply hit the button and you now listen instead of read. So it's a wonderful way of addressing different learning preferences in different situations by using what I consider to be simple technology to try to expand a person's ability to understand exactly what's going on with their loan product, with their disclosures, with their fees, and then most importantly, with closing. Closing is a big deal. A lot of people are very anxious, as we just discussed with some of the surveys, with respect to closing. And interestingly enough, we find about 10% of the time, that's when applicants actually use our system. So they seem to be fine with everything, but when closing comes around, they jump on the system to understand the closing documents that they'll be signing in their language of choice. They understand the process. They understand their responsibilities, and there's just a ton of different kinds of FAQs that are out there that help them explore and get answers to their various concerns. So again, it's just a whole bunch of stuff that we put together. Again, as you heard me mention, we're trying to address the purchasing generations of today that were brought up using YouTube, Google, and smartphones, and these are the kinds of tools that they use. So we're just mimicking what they're used to using and how they obtain and retain information. We're just utilizing
And then what's happening on your end? How how are these things being implemented? It sounds like George has a lot of stuff available through documents, but I don't want to misrepresent anything by saying, oh, all of this is being used by nCino. I'm not sure, what kind of relationship you folks have.
Yeah, no, that's the nice thing about it is a launching point from the nCino portal into the documents portal.
Okay.
So it's a complete integration that allows them to explore whatever George can serve up, so to say. And the beauty of it sounds so simple, but what's hard in technology is to remove friction and to remove breaking points in a workflow. And if you can make it a natural path to the consumption of whatever technology or data there is, that's the magic. And so now that documents, instead of being something that you're in nCino and then you try to communicate, oh, by the way, there's this thing over there somewhere that you can go find, and good luck finding it, and then you have to go over here to documents to find it. Now that it's completely embedded, and so it feels like one system, one source of truth or data, to consume, and it's very natural and easy to flow right into the intake process and see the next step. It says, hey, now you can learn about your process in XYZ, change the language, whichever language you prefer, and it flows right, continues right on into a documents experience. And that's what's unique and powerful and elegant in that workflow and frictionless in the workflow.
Do you think that this is something that, like you said, there's a demand there? This is something that's being responded to well since the announcement. What have you gotten as far as feedback is concerned?
Yeah, definitely. I go back to the mutual customers where we immediately had, of our mutual customer base, at least half of them have the integration already implemented now. And now looking for that other half to have it turned on and implemented and trained in a short period of time. And we are excited in particular and we feel like that will be now social proof to the rest of the industry to help be a catalyst for, both benefit documents and nCino as a differentiating factor in what we can do and how we can serve the community and the industry. And that we can grow that mutual customer base, that where both platforms will be able to pick up more customers as a result.
Well, thank you so much, gentlemen. I am just so excited to see where technology is taking us. I've been following technology in the mortgage space this year, and it's really exciting to see what's available. Thank you for listening to this Advancements in Technology podcast. If you would like to share what you are seeing in your market, please reach out to us at info@themortgagenote.org. Once again, my name is Kimberley Haas. Have a great day.